Welcome back to another episode of the Hard Money Talk Show. I'm your host, Lauren Grootman, and today I have a great episode for you from my friend, Jason Brown. So Jason, I'm going to let him share his story, but he has an awesome story of growing up in an inner city home, a home with bars on the windows. You know, he was broke, and he'll tell you that himself. And so he went from that to being a multi-millionaire. And he's going to share his struggles of how he went from inner city kid to being a multi-millionaire and the mental struggles that have affected him through that shift. So Jason also teaches stock investing, and he lost all of his money, not just once, but twice in the stock market. So he's also going to share with you his journey of what that took on his mental psyche to keep going in life after losing money, not just once, but twice. So this episode is packed with not only really good, helpful information about how to get back on track after you've lost everything, but also a lot of really insightful information about how to get over like a poverty mindset mentality. If you've grown up with nothing and then now have a lot, how do you face those demons that still follow you through your life? So I think that you're going to really enjoy this episode. So let's go dive in with Jason. All right, Jason, thanks so much for being on today. I'm like so excited as a friend and as a follower of yours. Like I'm in your course and your community. So I'm just so glad that you're here today to share your story.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's gonna be fun.
Well, a lot of people who are listening and watching this we actually met in Texas at FinCon, which is like, our financial bloggers, influencers, professional entrepreneur conference that I've been going to forever. And your story, we actually were, there was like a big crew of us hanging out one night, and we were just kind of talking about real life stuff. And your story just really hit me. And I'm like, I got to have him on the show because first of all, you're amazing. What your work that you do is amazing, but your story about how you got there is even more amazing. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, like you're just a stand-up guy, and I just appreciate that so much. And I appreciate like all the guys and ladies that we were hanging out with that night are just such genuine people that love to help other people. So let's go back all the way back to when in your early years. Like, talk to us about what it was like being Jason Brown, growing up, and where you grew up and what that was all like.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got into such deep conversation when we were at FinCon. And, when we take you back, I think I want to just set the framework for now and then go back and then come back forward so that people understand, what we're talking about. It's like now being able to say I'm a millionaire. I bought my first Ferrari last year, which was a whole experience in itself. We live in a house on the lake. We control our own time and work from home and invest in the stock market. And when you see those people or people, like myself who are seemingly living the life, right? Or you see them online and you're like, what do they do? Is this true? How did they get there? I used to be one of those people that's like a little bit irritated at people like me because I'm like, he doesn't really drive that car. Do they really live there? Stuff like that. But then I realized like I became one of those people, and I try to, which is why I'm excited to do this podcast, is try to, share the story of how we got to where we're at so that people can understand that we're just normal people, but we just made maybe some different decisions along the way. And so when we go back, one of the stories I know you and I talked about was just my upbringing. Grew up in Detroit, Michigan, single mother. My father passed away when I was like 2 years old. So didn't have a father in the household, not just because he wasn't there, because he passed away. And, my mom raised two boys. And from an early age, I was just so aware of money. And I don't know, maybe that was just my gift of just being aware, period. First of all, let alone if it was about money. I was just always aware. I was aware that some people had two parents and I had one. I was just always aware. But one of my money awareness thing started to come when I was about 10 years old or something like that. And I had visited my friend, my good friend Rick. I don't, if he ever comes across this podcast, he'll be like, that's me.
Hey,
uh,
Rick.
right. But I visited my good friend Rick's house, and I think I spent the night or something like that. And I was like, man, you have a bed. And I was like, I thought only grown-ups have beds. And that was like my first like realization that like we were living kind of a different life, because we slept in like sleeping bags on the floor. I don't know if we couldn't afford, I would imagine we couldn't afford beds. I'm too young that I didn't go to my mom and just say, hey, can we not afford a bed? I just was like, oh, I thought only grown-ups had it. That's what I thought. Like, oh, when I become a grown-up, I'll get a
Mhm.
bed. And then when I saw he had a bed as a kid, I was like, whoa, like you got a bed. I was excited for him. Like, I said, how'd you
You're
get
like,
one of
yeah,
those?
yep.
So in my head, I started to say, well, it's because he got two parents, right? So
Mm.
two incomes. So I get it. We got half the income. But that was my first introduction into like, I guess like, I'm trying to find the right word, because we always had love, we always had care, we always were taken care of. But my mom just didn't make a lot of money. So I don't want to say, we weren't poor, we were just broke.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
It's a
good
difference.
distinction. That's a good distinction, because you weren't poor because you were full of all of those other things, but you just didn't have the money.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. My mom made sure we played sports, hockey, all this stuff. And so fast forward, I remember dating this young lady. I was dating this young lady who lived in quote unquote the suburbs, and I lived in the inner city. And we had bars on our windows. We never opened our windows, so we didn't want people to look in. We're like, they might steal our TV. All this hood stuff, right? I mean, there's drug dealers on the block, just total hood stuff. And so I'm dating this girl, and I drive out to her house. I got this. I drive at the time I had a 1985 Cutlass Supreme. So I drive out to her house, and I pull up. And first I'm like, it's a brick house and not like a vinyl house. Like,
Right.
this is huge. And then, they had a fireplace, all this stuff. So I'm just mind blown. Like, what do your parents do? And but the distinction I had was like, I was like, oh, y'all don't have bars on the window. And believe it or not, for the longest time, I never really left like North. Never really went outside of Detroit. So
Mm.
like, I just thought everybody had bars on their window, unless it was like a California home we saw on TV. And I didn't realize people in my own backyard didn't have bars on their window, like an hour drive away. I was
Hmm.
like, they didn't have bars on their window. So I was just like, man, what do I have to do to live a life where I could have a bed? But I had a bed by then, though. I was like 18 at this point. But then I'm looking at them like, man, they got this beautiful house. And so one of the things I talk about in like, when people go to my webinar or something like that, I say like, I always said one day I want a what do they do house. Because when I pulled up to their house, I was like, what do they do?
I
That,
love that.
that
What do they do
question.
house?
Yeah, I was like, I want a what do they do house one day. I want people to step on my porch and be like, what does this guy do?
Right.
But that was the first time I ever felt that motivation of one what do they do type house. And that's where that came from for me, was just going to her house. I was like, man, what does her parents do? And they were engineers. And so I started studying money and wealth, and I quickly realized like I'm like, my mom, she had two jobs. So she had her main job, and then she had a part-time job, and we were still broke. So I immediately realized that two jobs was not going to get me to where I wanted to be. And
Hmm.
so I'm like, all right, I hear all these people talking about the stock market, and if I could be blunt, it was mostly white people who made their money from the stock market. So I'm like, all right, I got to do what the white people do. At least at that time, that was my thinking, because I didn't know anybody black that was in the stock market. Nobody in
Right.
my family, no one in my close circle. So I was like, all right, I got to get into the stock market. And so I had saved up like $2,000, and I'm like 20 at this time, and I graduated from high school. I think I'm a freshman and going into college, so I got like $2,000, and I go and put it into like a mutual fund with a bank. Well, I really just walked up to the bank, was like, I want to invest, and the lady asked me like two questions. She was like, "What's your goal?" And I was like, to be rich. Why else would I be doing this? Because we're broke. So like, let's get the ball rolling. I heard if you start now and leave it for 40 years, you'll be set.
Right.
So like, let's get this party started. So by 60, I'll be good. And so she was like, so that means you want aggressive funds. I was like, yeah, sounds about right.
You're like,
You
that's
know,
yep, that's it. That's it.
yeah, I'm young. Yeah, I want some aggressive funds. I needed to aggressively grow. You know, we could chop it down from 40 years to 20. I would appreciate that. so, and so that was my first foray into investment. She had to be looking like, who is this kid? Where did he get 2,000 from? I'm sure her clients didn't look like me, you know? But she just gladly took my money and was like, great, you're an investor. And I was like, it was the most anticlimactic event though.
Yeah, you're like, I just gave you all my money and I just walked
And I
out
just got
without
like a
any.
folder.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, that was no fun.
Yeah, I got like a folder, you know, it's like, oh, okay. This tells you about the fund that you're in, and here's some legal disclosures. I'm like, cool. So we're good. We're
Yeah.
invested. She's
Yeah.
like, sure. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
So that's it. But I felt great about the folder. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like walking out with the folder, like, I got my
I
folder. I'm an investor now. I was just so excited. But fast forward from that. So I come back a couple years later. I'm like 22. I'm like, and I tried to do what people do. I'm like, don't look at it. So I didn't look at it. I came back 22. 2 years later, I'm like, all right, how's the investment? And it was down to $700. And my heart just
Oh no.
yeah.
She did
My
not do a
heart,
good job.
it just dropped. My heart just dropped. And I was like, excuse me? I was like, that was all the money I had. Still was all the money I had. And it's like it's down to $700, you know. I'm like, so I think that was a defining moment for me, because what most people will do is say, well, they know better than me. If I did it, I would have lost all my money. Well, I had a different mindset. I was like, you lost 1,300. I could have lost my own money. Give me the rest of my 700 back. I'm gonna do this on my own. So I had the opposite effect. I was like, if you can lose money, I can lose my own. So I was like, give me my 700. The rest, I just cashed out. I think I took $200 and went shopping. Just did something to make me feel better.
Yeah.
You know, I know the ladies know about that.
Yeah.
Like they just, you know, they go shopping. Like, I'm doing something to make me feel better. I think I bought some Jordans or something.
There you go.
At least I got something to show for this money. And so I had $500. And at the time, I'm working for Sprint PCS. I'm making like $8 an hour. So on a Saturday, that's $64 an hour. And me and my cousin, we like wrote this calculation of how to figure out your taxes. We were like, they take about this much, so we should know how much money we'll get take home. So I figured out I take home about $50 every Saturday. So I was like, if I could just make $50 once a week in the stock market, I won't have to work Saturdays. And lo and behold, at $500 I had, our stock at Sprint was $5. So I was like, I can buy 100 shares, and all it needs to do is move 50 cents. And so I bought the stock at $5, and sure as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, the stock fell to $4. I'm like, I tried to pay somebody to do it. I lost money. I tried to do it on my own. I immediately first trade, first investment, lose money. And so it went down from 5 to 4. And then it went back up to 5. I'm like, great. I'm at break even. I just need to go to 550 so I can make that $50. All I need the stock to move 50 cents. I make $50. That's all I wanted in life.
Was that $50?
That's it, to not work Saturday. And so what happened was it went back up to 5. And sure enough, it turned around, went back down to 4. I'm like, is somebody playing a cruel joke on me? This was a life-defining moment for me. The moment I said, I've seen this before. I was like, if it goes back up to 5, I'm going to get out. And then I'm going to wait for it to fall to 4, and then I'm going to get in. So it went up to 5. I got out. I broke even. Fell down to 4. I ended up purchasing it. And then it went back up to 5. And at 5, I got out and I made $100. I didn't know if you drew that.
That's 2 Saturdays.
That was 2 Saturdays, right? In one go round. Well, I didn't know if you drew that out on a piece of paper, the stock would be going from 4 to 5, 5 to 4, 4 to 5. Well, I later found out that was called a channeling stock. And so I got super excited, like what other patterns out there exist that I don't know about. So I spent like the next year or two studying patterns. And then I know I'm saying a mouthful, but I'll get to the part where we kind of exploded. So then I was like, well, if I did that with $500, what if I had $1,000? What if I had $10,000? And so I was on a scholarship to Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. And again, I was always trying to think outside of the box of how to make money. And so I was like, well, how do I get $10,000? So I applied for a student loan because even though I had a scholarship, I didn't apply for student loan. Well, now I was like, maybe I should apply because I know we're financially able, or we don't make enough money that I would qualify. And I knew that they would double pay the account and then I would get the refund. And
Mm-hmm.
so the student loan paid and then the scholarship paid, and I got kicked back a $10,000 refund. And sure enough, I put that 10,000 in the stock market and I grew it to $120,000 as like a 21, 22-year-old kid. And I was just sold at that point. More money than I ever made in my life, not working. More money
Right.
than my mother had made being on this earth like 50 years. I was just like, yeah, this is it. I got something here.
That's something. So like take me back to like the mindset of that. Cause like, so a lot of I've had a lot of therapists on this show, and we talk about like the conditioning of our mind when we're kids. So, you're conditioned that like only grown-ups have beds, that all houses have bars on the windows. And so growing up, like I was talking in a interview that I did previously about how like my house is an old house, and my kids, they know that if they flush the toilet while somebody's in the shower, the person in the shower is going to get like scalding hot water. So they just know not to flush the toilet when somebody's in the shower. So every time we go anywhere, to a hotel, nobody ever flushes the toilet if somebody's in the shower. Cause like that's just, you know what I mean? Like this conditioning of
Hmm.
how we were raised is so deeply ingrained in us. So now you're like, okay, you found this thing, right? And you're making money. Does that conditioning follow you? Like that the way you were raised, and those things that you saw and growing up where you saw, like, did that follow you, up until this point, like those things in your, that you grew up with?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the things that we grew up with still haunts me to this day. Um, so like for example, or just to kind of elaborate, you know, when we didn't have a bed and we had bars on the window, for me, I'm a very logical and analytical and observable person. So for me, it more so said, what can I do that my mom is not doing? Because I knew whatever she was doing, I needed to do the opposite of it. And I joke with my mom to this day. I love her. Whenever I have to make a tough decision, I call my mom and ask what she would do, and then I actually do the opposite. So, because my mom is the barometer of like, like she's gonna go the safe route. She's from Mississippi. They came up picking cotton in the fields. I mean, so she is.
Right.
She was just happy to have a job. And so when I first made $120,000, and I called my mom, I'm like 22, I think. I said, "Mom, I just made $122,000." And the first thing my mom said was, "You're not gonna quit your job, are you?" She didn't say like, I'm like, Mom, I'm making $8 an hour. Like, what you mean am I not going? Like, she didn't say like, how'd you do it?
Right.
Like, do some more of that. Like, go, Jason. I'm so
Right.
proud of you. She was like,
Right.
you're not gonna quit your job, are you?
Making $50 a day.
Yeah, making $50 on a Saturday. I'm slinging cell phones inside of Best Buy, Circuit
Right.
City. I'm standing. I'm that guy that hounds you when you come in. Like, who's your cell phone provider? We got good deals today. And she's like, "You're not gonna quit your job, are you?" And
Mhm.
just, but that was the conditioning that my mom grew up in.
Mhm.
And so what I'm saying is, I looked at her and started to say, what do I need to do differently? But some of the things that still haunt me to this day is that because my mother would always say like, you didn't don't quit your job. She would say stuff like, you don't know how long that's gonna last. You don't know if you can do that again. And so some of the things that haunt me to this day, even though we've like unmasked millions of dollars, built the business, teaching people how to invest in the stock market. I got this one trade that I did a YouTube video on. I made, how much did I make? I made 400 and like, I don't know, $60,000 in one trade. I put 200,000 up. I made 400,000. We paid off our house. Um, my point is, even with all of that, sometimes what still haunts me is I'll question like, is this gonna last?
Mm.
And it's just because of my upbringing and because of the seeds that she planted in me. Sometimes even after I've had success, she would be like, don't quit your job, or you don't know how long that's gonna last. And then what people don't know is if we go back a little bit before the success again and after making 120,000, we did invent it. When I say we, I'm talking like I'm in third person, but myself, I ended up losing. I say we because I kind of feel like I represent the family, because I feel like I'm doing this for the whole team. Like I'm gonna
Mhm.
retire moms, help my brother. But I eventually started making 100,000 like 2 years in a row, and then like year three, I'm like 25 or something like that. I risked like a quarter million trying to make like 500,000. I'm like, I'm gonna pay cash for this condo downtown. I'm gonna be living this life. Yeah, I end up losing a quarter million, which was everything I had at the time. And so I go back to broke, and I have to go move back into the place that had bars, the
Mm.
place where I first had my twin bed, and I had to sleep in that twin bed. And true story, I think I told you this, or maybe I didn't, but I was taught, I don't know where, but I was always into personal development. I was in network marketing companies. And I remember the guy on stage was like, whatever your situation is right now, take a picture of it, because it won't always be like this, and you want to remember where you came from, or how you got out of it. Because instead of being embarrassed about your situation, he's like, take a picture and like use that as motivation. Like one day it won't be like this. Well, I went a step further. So I took video. So I actually videoed me having to sell all my stuff because I was broke. I actually videoed moving back home, and I got video of like moving back into that one bedroom house.
Mm.
My mom's sleeping on the couch. I'm in the room. It was a humbling experience. But my point is, and I don't know, maybe one day when I tell my life story, we'll release that video. Uh, it'll be part of some movie or something. But for the first time, or should I say, that's why that stuff haunts me, is because she would say it like, "Don't quit your job. You don't know how long it's gonna last." And then for it to happen, um, it to this day, I be like, even though I paid off my house, we're debt free, we have money in the bank, we have investments. Some days I still wake up and I'll be like, man, is this gonna last? And
Mm.
so to answer your question, that's some of the stuff that still haunts me, that I have to work on. Because people think like millionaires or people making all this money, living this life, got it figured out. And it's like, no, we still got like fears and stuff that haunt us too. We just keep going forward anyway.
Right.
Um, so that haunts me to this day, and I realize it's part of the game, though. Winning
Mhm.
and losing, making money, getting it back is all part of the game. So it wasn't that my mom spoke it into me. It was just like, that's just part of the game. You could lose money, so I don't want to give her that much power. Like she spoke it happened. I'm not superstitious.
Right.
I think what keeps me going forward today is like knowing, just like, number one, winning and losing is part of the game. Number two, when you lose, there's an opportunity to learn something and build it back and come back stronger. I think had I just told people like, I took my first 2,000, I opened my mutual fund, now I'm rich, I never looked at it, look at me. I don't think that story would be able to help people. It's like when I talk to people now, they're like, I just lost 50,000
Mm.
and that was all I had. I'm like, yeah, I lost a quarter million. I get it. And had to move back home with moms as a 25-year-old male who used to drive a Lexus, live in the suburbs, and thought I was living the life.
Mm.
So I'm able to say, this is how I got through it. This is how I pulled back up. Take a picture, shoot a video. Where you gonna be in 5 years when you get it back? And so, like, I think going through that, I'm able to have a tougher conversation with someone who it doesn't work out for on the first time or the second time, because we actually made the money back, lost it again. So another story.
Wait, we gotta hear that. Like, so did you have to go, did you move back out and then move back in with her again?
I did. I had to move back home twice. But this but listen. Okay, so let's go there. The second time, so so here's what
Yeah, let's
happened.
go there. We want to hear all the dirty details, Jason. That's what the show's all about.
All right. Well, I really hope this helps somebody, because when I moved back home the first time, I didn't want to.
Mm.
Right, which is going to be a key setup for the second time I had to move back home. First time I moved back home, I'm like, this is embarrassing. I lost everything. I had to move back home. But this taught me some new life principles. I was like, all right. By the way, I had a tax lien because I didn't pay taxes for 3 years. I got some bad tax advice because I had never made that much money in my life. And then I didn't know anybody who didn't make that
Right.
much money. So God told me I didn't have to pay taxes for 3 years. What he really meant was that they won't come after you for 3 years. I thought he meant I didn't have
That's
to.
a big difference.
I thought even I didn't have to pay for 3 years. So I'm like, oh, cool. I'll worry about that later. Right. So here comes year number 3. I lose all my money. Didn't realize now I owe 3 years worth of taxes And I've hit the maximum amount allowed where they actually start coming for you. So now I don't have the money and they come for me. I have a tax lien. My credit is shot. It's just a horrible time, right?
Mhm.
I still owe the student loan because I didn't pay it back because I'm like, why? I'm making money. I'd rather keep making money. I'll pay it back later. So now I
Right.
have a student loan that I really shouldn't have had. I got debt, all this stuff. So it's horrible. But in that moment, I did what I did best. I just mapped it out. I was like, all right, I got to get a job, need some money.
Right.
So I go get a job at Verizon Wireless. I'm like, let me do what I know how to do. I know how to sell cell phones. So I go get a job at Oakland Mall at Verizon. I got like a $50,000 salary, perfect, but I can make commission. So I'm a logical person. I said, I'll build my lifestyle around the hourly, and then all the commission I'll use to get back into the stock market and pay down my debts.
Hmm.
I said, I need to lower my expenses. A cell phone is an expense. If I work for a cell phone company, they give me a cell phone for free. So I'm just super logical. So I'm like, that's $200 a month that I could use towards something. Then I found out they had tuition reimbursement. I'm like, because by
Mm.
the way, I dropped out of school. I never finished. I got
I was
all the
going
way
to
to
ask
like my
that if you had the student debt but no degree. So
no degree. Because I got to my junior, almost senior year, and I'm making all this money as a trader. I'm like, why would I finish your degree? I want to be a trader.
I'm a
So
trader.
so I drops out. I was an engineering student, drops out. Well, now I get this job at Verizon. They got tuition reimbursement. I'm like, well, now I know what I want to be. It's going to take me 5 years before I can get back to financial freedom, so to speak. It's going to take me 5 years to get my degree. Why don't I go to school part-time? They'll pay for it. I know what I want to do now. So I go back to school for finance. So I'm living off my lifestyle off the hourly. I'm taking my commission checks. I'm reinvesting in the stock market. Back then, BlackBerry was hot, so I'm buying BlackBerry stock. I'm making thousands again. So I make back the money to pay off the government. I got my school being paid for by Verizon. I eventually get out of debt. I'm debt free. So I'm like, all right, I'm quitting my job again, right? So I get back to the point where it's like, okay, I'm quitting my job again. Because I remember I always wanted to quit my job. I never really wanted to be this corporate guy. It took me about 4 or 5 years, quit my job again. I'm full time trading again. And I don't even know what went wrong this time, but like I had some trades that just didn't work out, right? And so, but what I realized in the process this time was like, I was like, well, if I ever lose my money again, I don't want the only job that I can get to be a job in the mall selling phones. So that's why I went back to get my degree. So now
Mhm.
I teach people, I always say like raise your floor. So people might be like, well, why do I want to go to school if I'm going to do this for the rest of my life? Or why have a plan B? Or why learn how to invest if I'm a singer or a football player or whatever? It's like, it's just called raising your floor. I said, if I get knocked back down again, I don't want the best job that I can get to be $50,000 selling cell phones in the mall. I didn't want to ever be disqualified from the $100,000 job because it said you need a degree or whatever
Mhm.
the case may be. Now I know times have changed and you can do your own thing, but I'm just saying, learn a new skill, get some education, whatever the case may be. I call it raising my floor. And so I left with my floor raised. This time I left, I'm like, I got a degree. I have some work experience. I know if I have to go back to work, I can get a better job. And sure enough, that happened. I lost some money, but this time when I lost, I was doing my thing and then I lost some money. But this time I had a different twist on things. I was like, I want to get $1 million in my account because I knew what it was like to have $100,000 trading account, $200,000 trading account. I was like, I want $1 million in my trading account. And I was like, what moves and sacrifices would I have to make to have that type of money in my trading account? And so this time I was like, I'm selling my stuff. I'm moving back home. But I made the decision to do it this
Mm.
time because I actually could have stayed where I was at because I ended up getting a job at Comcast making 75,000, and with commission I was making over 100,000. But I realized that I would just be making enough to tread water, pay my bills. I was like, I want to be in a position where I can almost put the whole 100,000 in the stock market.
Right. And really make that grow to that million.
Yes. And so in my mind, I had a new blueprint because I'm like, oh, I moved back home before, got a job. And so now it was nothing to live off $10,000, $20,000 a year. Cause I'm like, oh, I did this before. And this time it's like, oh, it's easy. Like
Mhm.
I'm like, move
I've
home
been
with
there.
moms. Yeah, I'm just gonna work like crazy, take all the money, invest it. I don't need much. I was never really home that much the second time anyway, because that's when you start like, I'm just going to work as much as I can. I'm in Starbucks with my laptop. So in my opinion, the second time around, I was just really coming home to like lay my head at night, if that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
I was grinding.
It's funny. It's like, so when I was getting out of debt, so my ex-husband and I were married still. Obviously, it was like when we made the decision, we had this custom house built for us, and we moved to South Carolina for a couple of years from New York, and within one day we found out that like all 10 houses that surrounded our house were going in foreclosure. Like this one ministry owned all 10 of them, and they were all going into foreclosure. So we had to like quick sell our house and move back to New York. And that was like when we were in the most amount of debt. We were in like over $40,000 worth of debt. We had to sell our custom, this beautiful house that we had built for us, put all of our stuff in storage, live with his parents for a couple months. And then we downsized to like a 900 square foot apartment, because that's like, we just made the choice to put our money towards the debt. And instead of going and getting like what do they do? Was that what you said? What do they do house?
What do they do house? Yeah.
Instead of going, because we had done that before, we got this teeny tiny apartment that like you had to move the kitchen table even get into the refrigerator. Like, so like if we were all eating, we all had to like get up and like move if like we forgot the ketchup or something. And, but I remember that being such a happy time of like a conscious choice of like, we're not going to live this way anymore. Like we have choices. And a lot of people don't want to make those choices. They want to continue to like drown and live their life because their pride and their ego are too much a part of their story, that they don't want to sell everything and they don't want to move back home and they don't want to make those sacrifices to do what you did and to do what I did. So like, were there some people that were like, what are you doing? Like, you're doing this again? Or did you just didn't care at that point?
So the first time it was humbling. Like, what are people going to think about me?
Mm-hmm.
The second one, like you kind of have this like vision of like, oh, people gonna think I fell off and all this and that, right? And so like you actually care the first time. Like the second time, you're like, like give me 2 years. I'm gonna be living like none of y'all in 2 to 3 years.
Show
like
you.
Trust me. So like the second time, I was just like, no, trust me, I got a plan, and it's different when you have a plan. Because when people like, dang, you moving back home again? I'm like, ooh, wait till 2 years though. Because you don't know how it's going to turn out, but you know that going down this road is highly probable that something good can turn out. Because I know going down the other road, I'll have my mom as an example. Like I'll have 2 jobs. My kids will have no bed. We'll have bars on the one. Like I already know what going down that road leads. And then I'm super analytical. There's only 24 hours in a day. We're not robots. We can't even work the full 24. So I'm super analytical. I'm like, that's not going to get me the wealth. Then I'm like, well, I'll get a good job with a salary, which I got. But I was like, oh my God, that's the golden handcuffs, because I worked way more than 40 hours and I couldn't get paid overtime because I like agreed to 100,000 or 75,000 plus commission, which ended up being 100,000. But I was like, it don't matter how many hours I work. Then I go pay me a penny more. So I was like, that sucks. Then I'm not ragging on jobs because I employ people. I'm just saying a job is just designed to do what it's supposed to do, which is like, you said you can do this skill, we're agreeing to pay you this much. None of that was a contract for you to get wealthy, buy your dream house, live in your dream car. Like they didn't say that in the interview. They said, you can do these skills. This is what we pay for it, period. Right. You figure out how much your own groceries or whatever you can afford to live costs. And so I realized that wasn't going to get me there. And so from a mindset standpoint, I just was like, man, like I had this mindset, like, wait till you see me in 2 to 3 years, number one. But number two, being analytical, I was like, what I realized early on in life, and even to this day, I try to make decisions like this. I say, what sacrifice do I have to make today so that I can live differently tomorrow? And no matter when you make the sacrifice, the cost is roughly going to be the same. And what I mean by that, I have a friend who was thinking about going back to school, and their daughter was like 2 years old. And they were like, well, I don't want to miss, it's like going to take her 3 years to get a degree. She's like, I don't want to miss her between 2 and 5. And I remember one day I sat down when I was like, let me tell you something. The cost of going to school is going to cost you 3 years of your life. You have to decide if you're going to miss from 2 to 5 from 10 to 13, from 15 to 18 of her life, from 18 to 21. But you go have to sit in class or on a computer, do the work, and it's going to take you 3 years. There's no way around it. And so I think once I understood that, my only question was, at that time, I'm 25. Do I want to pay the cost now for 3 to 5 years and live from 30 on like no one else? Or do I want to play around, have fun, and pay the cost at 35 to 40? Do I want to pay the cost from 40 to 45? Like, when do I want to pay the cost? Because the cost ain't changing if you want a better life or if you want something different, financially, your time, where you live, what you're able to give to your church's charity and community. The cost is going to be the same, roughly. There's a price that has to be paid. And I think I just started making a decision early, like, let's pay the price now. Let's just move back home now. I'd rather do it now than when I'm 50, now than when I'm 40 with kids. And so I was just like, let's just do it now. And even if you're 40 with kids, it's like, well, let's just get this out the way so that 45 or 43 on can be like nobody else's business. I think once you come to peace with that, you just like, let's go.
If you started 2022 with more debt than you'd like to have, you're not alone. Debt.com is here to help. Whether you still have holiday credit card debt to pay off or student loan payments are starting to build up again. Maybe you even have debt collectors that are hounding you for payments you just can't make. The experts at Debt.com can help. Finally, one website can help you solve your debt problems. Credit cards, back taxes, student loans, medical debt, collections, you name it, Debt.com can help you solve it. And they do it with no judgments. Because they understand that when people end up in debt, it's usually for things outside their control, like job loss or divorce or some other hardship. So if you're in debt, visit laurengrutman.com/debt to get the relief you need. Or call 888-431-2044 to get a free consultation with a debt relief specialist. Find solutions to get out of debt, fix your credit, and get on the path to achieving your financial goals. When life happens, visit Debt.com. That's kind of the place where I'm in my life now, just being a single mom and my kids are getting older. I'm like, okay, like now's the time. And you actually have inspired me because I never really had so much of an interest to get involved in the stock market. But after just sitting down with you and I'm like, I gotta join his community. And I've been like so mind boggled with like, there's so much information and you're such a good teacher of it that my mind is just blown. Like I need to take it in like little steps though, because I'm like, okay, options, like, bullish, bearish, like all these terms that I'm trying to learn and even just the conversations in your forum with like the members and, talking about what good stocks are. And like, I'm like, I need like a translator, I'm not quite there yet, but you really inspired me to, cause we have to pay the price somehow. And I'm just the type of person that I don't want to look back on my life when I'm 70, if I make it to 70, we don't know when we're gonna,
Right.
Leave this earth, but I don't want to live a life where I have regrets. And if I can take a year to like focus on a new skill, like investing in the stock market is my goal this year, is like learning that in and out. If I can learn that and really, grow a lot of wealth, which I do believe, because I'm very analytical like you, and I'm a go-getter, like that I can take chances and things like that. But if I can do a skill like that, like why wait? I don't want to get to like 50, 60 and be like, oh man, I wish I had started when I was 40,
Yeah, that's the number. I mean, I don't own a survey company or anything, but from my from my observations, one of the number one regrets of people who either don't invest or eventually invested is that they wish they had done it earlier. That's one of the, it's kind of like when they say when people pass away on their deathbed, they don't say, I wish I worked more hours. They don't say, I wish I bought a different car. They probably say, I wish I had more experiences, this and that. Well, same thing with people with money. Usually, one of the biggest regrets is I wish I had started earlier, or I wish I had started. Some people just never start.
Right.
And that's like the second biggest regret. It's like, I should have learned that. I should have took a course. I should have made the time. Because we all got time, but it's not it's becoming more sexy now, which I'm excited about this new era of investing with, Robinhood and with social media. Investing is now becoming cool. And so it's now cool to post like studying stocks on a Sunday night. But back in the day, that wasn't really cool. It's like, oh,
Right.
that's lame, boring. Oh, she's the boring girl. That's the boring guy. Come out and party. Well, now it's like cool to post on social media, checking my portfolio, checking my stocks. And so I'm hoping that that energy continues to where it is cool that that's what you're doing on a Saturday or Sunday night and learning that. And what's awesome about the stock market and what I'm excited about for you and anybody who gets involved with the market is once you learn the skill, it's like riding a bike. You kind of got to go out there, fall a little bit. Somebody got to hold the back of the seat. That might be your first summer.
Mm-hmm.
But next summer on, you doing willies. You riding to your friend house. You riding up to the store. You got a little basket. You going up to the gas station getting pop and chips, coming back. Like
Yep.
your life from that point on, you don't necessarily have to relearn how to balance. And that's how the stock market is. Once you kind of learn it, it just supports you for the rest of your life. You don't necessarily have to relearn it. And it's also something that you can put money in and have working for you now while you still go off to your job and do your other thing. That
Mm-hmm.
was one of the things that intrigued me about the market. One of my mentors was like, I was like, man, I'm gonna get a second job. He was like, well, two jobs is for two people. And people be having all these like cliche-ish terms. So when he
Yeah.
said that, I never heard that before. I'm like, two jobs is for two people. That's a good point. I'm like, what? And then he followed it up. He was like, so let me ask you something. Did the first job get you where you wanted to be in life? I'm like, no. He's like, then why would you go get a second one that pays you
Mm.
less? I was like, I mean, I'm
Ooh.
talking just uppercut questions,
Yeah.
like, just challenging all my beliefs, you know? And so, I started listening to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and different things. I'm like, all right, I need my active income, which is my job. I actually work, trade. But I was like, I need some passive income. And then I was like, the stock market is passive. Once I put the money in and let it work, it's working while I go off to a job. So I'm like, that was literally in my head. I was like, oh my God, I can duplicate myself.
Right.
I can create another Jason Brown that doesn't get sick, doesn't get tired, doesn't need to take a vacation day. And when you start thinking about it like that, you're like, ooh, like it's a money machine. It's a printing press. And
Mm-hmm.
so, that's what gets me excited about it. I'm like, okay, how do I get a printing press? How do I get
Yep.
a money machine? How do I get an employee that doesn't get sick, doesn't talk back, doesn't take days off? And then if you look at here's what's interesting about the stock market. Even if you don't do all the options and crazy stuff we talk about, the statistics show that through 9/11, Ebola virus, Trump China trade war, pandemic, there's one thing that's 100% true is that the stock market continues to go up.
Mm-hmm.
Through all the tragedies in life, you pick whatever tragedy you want, the Great Depression of, I don't know, the 80s or whenever it was. I don't care what event you pick, we are higher than any event we've ever went through in life. So if that is in itself is true, if you do the bare minimum and just learn how to open an account and how to put money in just the S&P 500, which you can't buy the S&P 500, but something that mirrors it and just leave it. If you just do that and come back in 20 years, you'll probably be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You won't be like putting it in a mutual fund in a bank and losing $1,300. you know?
Right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people put their money in the bank and hope that it does something and they're not paying attention, while the
No,
bank is
no.
off there taking your money and making money off of your money. Why not make money off of your own money?
Exactly. And
You
we're not
know?
we're not taught to think like the bank, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we never really question why is this the process. I question everything now,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I'm like, all right, why are they giving me an incentive to leave? Like I got my one account, like they want me to leave $100,000 in there, and I do. For the years, I've left 100,000 in there because like you get these perks, free wires and
Right.
a safety deposit box. I'm like, I don't really need a safety deposit box, but anyway, they give you these little $2, like $2 to $35 incentives, and I'm like, why is that? It's like, well, but me leaving 100,000 in there, they can loan out 900,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, all right, my money's in the bank. They take my money and they go give somebody a loan on a house.
Right. And they're going to make in money on that.
They're going to make double because
Mm-hmm.
most people don't realize $100,000 house paid off over 30 years costs you $200,000.
Right.
But they go give me $35 free wires. You know what I'm saying? They give me
It doesn't match
$35
up.
free.
That doesn't match
Yeah.
up, right? No, I get it.
Here's a better one. They're going to waive the $2.50 if I use an out of market ATM.
Oh,
like,
that's
oh,
nice.
thank you.
Well, thank you. While they
I
go and make millions
appreciate it.
off of your money. And no,
Yeah.
they don't think like that. And there's this one book that I read, and I think it's like Become Your Own Banker. That I really, really liked. And it talked all about that, like why the banks are a business, and everybody thinks like, oh, my bank is so great. It's like, no. They're just making money off of your money. So if you can learn how to make your own money off of your money, you're in a much better place. So, and a lot more financially stable than, putting it in the bank to just sit there and make like 0.05% interest, which is nothing,
Yeah, once you get the money game down, now I'm like, I'm gonna leave the bare minimum in here. And why don't I go find some people to loan money to for their real estate investments? That's just how I think. Like, why don't I loan money? Why don't I be a
hard money lending or something like that?
Yeah. Why not? That's what they doing. I mean, all they're gonna do is like, show me your financials, show me the house. They're going to put the legal stuff in place to make sure they don't get screwed. But why can't I just tell somebody, show me your financials. Let me see that you got a consistent job, consistent paycheck. Why don't I come up with my own formula to determine how much they can afford and loan them the money and put the legal paperwork in place to take the house back as well?
Exactly.
There you go. I mean, so
always thinking your money should be working for you. That's what I always think. So, okay, so let's fast forward to now. I love when we were talking about the Ferrari when we were in Texas, and how you were saying, I don't know did you say that you go and pick up kids in the inner city, or you want to?
I said I want to do that. I wanted to like set up something where I pick up a kid once a week or something.
I think that's so cool because then you can show them like, this is what's possible. Like, I came from here, and I'm in the what do you do house with the boat,
right.
With the boat and 2 kids and a beautiful wife, and you did exactly what you set out to do. So, but I think the important thing is to know is what you said, is that we still like have that conditioning and those things that we have to push down in our brain, right? Of like how we were raised, the things that we were conditioned to think about, and those could be struggles the rest of our life, but now we know what to do with them, so I think that's an important thing to touch on too, even as successful as you've been now, not only just in your own trading, but starting a business. Talk about the business that you run, because I mean, I'm a member of it, but so that people know what that's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's a couple of things that's interesting about what you said. And like when you have this perception of what life is going to be like when you make $1 million, right? When you like finally have made millions, like, and when I say made millions, like this is going on my second year being a millionaire. I can tell you when you have not made $1 million or not even worth $1 million, et cetera, you think it's a lot of money. It's weird when you get here, you be like, it ain't that much.
Is it because your spending goes up, do you think, or it's just taxes, or what do you think?
Okay, and so I want to make sure if you're listening to this and you don't have $1 million, and our business does over $1 million a year as well. This is no disrespect to a person who's struggling to make ends meet or anything like that. I do not want to come across like, what does he mean $1 million is not enough? And if you do comparison, sure, it's a lot of money. Like, oh, I only make 50,000. It's a lot. But when you compare it to how big your dreams and aspirations grow, it's not a lot of money. And what I mean by that is like, it's not that our spending goes up. It's like, I want to buy bigger stocks. I want to buy stocks like Amazon that are $3,000 a share. So in order to get me like 1,000 shares, I need like 2 million. Well, if I'm only making 1 million, it's like, okay, I need like 3 more of these just to buy 1,000 shares of Amazon. So you start to realize like it was a lot of money when I was only buying $5 stocks like Sprint PCS. But when you start to look at like, okay, what does Warren Buffett buy? He owns 2 billion in Apple shares. You're like, you'd be like, okay, my million is not a lot of money compared to like where you, now that you know what's possible
Mm-hmm.
from investing standpoint, things you want to do. I looked at this apartment complex in Royal Oak. It was like Royal Oak is like a high end city here, but basically, the apartment complex was like 1.1 million. Now you could finance it, but once you get debt free, sometimes you kind of go on this kick where it's like, I don't want to go in debt. I'd rather just pay cash for it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you paid cash for it, I mean, that's like wipe out a whole year of a million.
Mm.
Plus, you don't get to keep a million. You got to pay taxes, different
Right.
things. So, I mean, now you wiping out 750,000 or whatever you get to keep. So now it's like I need 2 years if I want to pay for that in cash. So that's what I mean when I say it's not as much money as you think. Not because you're spending more, but the things you want to invest in and the differences that you want to make go beyond. I want to get out of debt and keep the lights on. Like you, once you get
Right.
out of like survival mode, you're like, how do I buy my mama a house? Right?
Right.
How do I set my kids up with a fund that, if they want to start their own business, they can start with a million, like Trump's father started him with a million, right? Whether you
Mm-hmm.
like the guy or not, that's a whole different debate. I'm just saying his daddy started him with $1 million in dollars to start his real estate business. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and he grew it to billions. What could your kids do if you could start them off with $1 million? And
Right.
so that's what I mean by it's like, it doesn't seem like that much money. The other side of it is, on the outside, people will be like, "You're so successful." We talked about this, and we had a humble group. We were around a bunch of people who've all done some version of 500,000 to $1 million in their life, or
Mm-hmm.
currently doing it. And none of us were like, "I'm so successful. Look at me."
Right.
And what do you do? We were all there like, we still trying to figure it out.
We don't know it
Like,
all. Yep.
yeah, we don't know it all. Our businesses could be better. We could be doing more for our customers. So my point is, success to us doesn't feel as successful as the people on the outside looking in. We are our biggest critics. I
Mm-hmm.
always feel like I could be doing more. And so, it's, I guess I want to encourage people to enjoy the process, because the process was way more fun than getting here. Because now when you get here, I'm plagued with thoughts from my mom. Like, am I going to lose it all again? Right. Then you
Mm-hmm.
get plagued with imposter syndrome.
Yep.
For example, if I have a bad trade, when I was just me doing my trade and I had a bad trade, I'm like, dang, that didn't work. Now, when I have a bad trade as a trader, I'm like, I got to do a YouTube video about it and let people know I lost $30,000.
Mm.
And then I'm like, well, what will people think of me? Because I lost 30,000. Does that mean I'm not a good trader? Now, I know that doesn't mean that, but we have all this new baggage now. And
Yep.
sometimes I post like I lost 30,000 to show them that I still lose money at this point. But I'm saying the baggage and the heaviness still weighs on you, even though you're quote unquote successful.
Yep.
Um, so anyway, I don't know. I just felt compelled to share that. But as far as the business goes, we built a business that does over $1 million, teaching people how to invest. And I built the business that I always wanted, because I was like, why don't they explain the stock market like this? And then in my community, I'm like, none of my friends are really into the stock market. I didn't have any place I can go to talk about the stock market. And so my business was birthed out of what I needed. I was like, I want a place where I can watch these videos, talk to other people about it, ask questions. I used to be like, I wish I could see what decisions a trader made in real time, to see like, how come I didn't see it like that? Or what was I
Mm-hmm.
thinking? What was my parents thinking when Microsoft was coming out, and why didn't they invest? Like, what if they could have watched someone analyze and say, this is going to be the future. This is why I'm investing, and made some decisions based off that. And we kind of lived through the same thing with Tesla.
Yep.
It's like we're watching the transformation of cars to electricity. And so I look at it as like, I wanted to build this platform where everything I wanted, the learning, the community, and to watch a real trader do it real time. And so I created, obviously Power Trades University, so that I could share what I do and what I wish I had when I was coming through the ranks. And
Yeah.
that's how it became to be.
And it's awesome. Like, it's got so much information, and it's the way that you explain everything is so simple and analytical for because my brain, if you make it too complex, I'm like, well, I'm out of there. But the way that you explain it is exactly the way that I learn. And to be so real and authentic. And that's, I think, the group that we were hanging out with at FinCon, that's why I loved it so much, is because we're all so like real, authentic. We're successful business owners, but yet we're like, we could do better. We can help people more. And I definitely struggle with, I don't want to say like I live in a small, very, very small town. And a lot of people here don't know what I do. Like I've gotten a couple times, like, do you live off of child support? Like, I'm like, no, I don't. Like,
How
sorry.
assumptive, right?
Because I live in like a smaller, in upstate New York. Like, it's like, no, I run a really successful financial company, but even with my readers and followers, I don't think I've ever really talked about the amount of money that I've made through my career, like millions of dollars through my website and through my business, because I've always tried to be like the relatable person that got out of debt. And I feel like I've done a misfortune to them almost, because it's like there's another part of that. Like I got out of debt, right? Like you had that part too. Like you made money in the stock market and then you lost it, and then you made money and then you lost it, and then now you've grown this huge business from it, but you can still lose money. That relatability piece, like as we're talking, I'm seeing that like that's a part of my brand that I've missed out on, is showing people like, yes, I was in debt, but now I've built this multi-million-dollar company over the past decade, where I'm teaching you how to do this, but also like I'm also a very successful entrepreneur and business person that I don't let on to them with that, and maybe it's because I'm trying to be humble, or maybe it's because I'm trying to be like the relatable, debt-free person, but I think they need to hear that part too, that there's success beyond that debt-free story, that like you can become a millionaire after that.
Absolutely. And what's interesting about what you just said is like I went through something similar, because like I recite a lot of Drake quotes, and one of these quotes from Drake really resonated with me. He said, "Winning is problematic. Everybody likes you when you're working towards something, not when you have it."
Mm-hmm.
And that verse really resonated with me, because I feel like when I was working towards getting out of debt and making money, like it's funny how like when you're working towards it, you'll have like some Snickers, but most people will be like, go get him, Lauren.
Yeah.
Go get him, Jason. You can do this. You're going to be somebody someday. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's this side where like, then I got the house, I got the Ferrari. And then there's this side like, oh, you big time now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, so when I was working towards it, everybody was like teaming and supporting me. You can do it. I finally get it. And now I want to show it. Like, guys, look where I live. Look at the car. Not bragging, but I just want to show you it's possible, coming from Detroit, bars on the window. And now people are like, he too, not everyone, but sometimes you like, people are like, he big time now. I had one guy he actually emailed me and say like, I like the Jason Brown that didn't used to go out on boats and drive Ferraris and live in a big house. And I was just like,
you're like, I'm the same person.
no, I'm not the same person. I know I'm totally, I'm the same person at the core,
Right.
but I'm not at home. Like one day we're going to get out of this situation, guys.
Right.
I'm broke. I just got a $25 charge back that, made my check bounce, but it's okay. We'll survive. Now I'm like, yeah, guys, about to take the Ferrari. I'm still the same person, but the story has changed. You would think they'd be like, now most people are supportive, but some people aren't. But my point is that I think I had to come to the acceptance that my audience that got me to where I was in the beginning is not going to be the same audience in the end. And I just had to come to peace with that.
Yeah.
Some people are still riding with me. I'm talking about people who've been with us for 4 years, 5 years in the program. But there's also a revolving door of people that come in at this season of my life when I was like a college kid. And there's some people who left and they're still here. But then there's some people who's coming in at this season that are also millionaires. It's like, how do I take my million and grow it? So you're also going to attract a different type of person, and you can't worry about it. But I think people need to realize that, they should want your story to change. Like, I mean, what is after debt free? I would love for you to come back on like after debt free, start investing. I took this course. Now I'm investing. So now you have a whole nother legacy of like, here's where you graduate to. You don't want to be working on debt free forever. Like,
no,
you
and
gotta get out of that.
Yeah. And that's like a big reason, after FinCon, I did a lot of soul searching and talked about what the next steps for me were personally, but as a brand. And one of the big things was this podcast and starting my membership, which I was like, I'm not starting a membership. And then Shane got to me. And we've had Shane on the show here as well too. And And I was like, you know what? No, like a membership is something that is valuable, but because I can take people through the journey of getting out of debt, but then no, we're not going to stop there. Like we don't want to just be okay with being debt free anymore. We want to build wealth and we want to start investing and being okay with like taking people on that other half of the journey with me that I've been on for a couple of years, but haven't changed the brand and the voice behind that. And having these
Right.
real money conversations with people like you who have gone from no bed and bars, on the windows to, millions, but yet still have these demons in our heads of like, I could lose it all in a heartbeat, because I think everybody has those things in their head. And, I definitely didn't come into this with like an abundance mentality I didn't even try to start a business when I came into this. I was just trying to share how to get out of debt. And it, blew into what this is now, so,
But
so
there's
it's a
power in
gift.
baby steps. There's
Mm-hmm.
power in baby steps. Cause like when I first started, I just wanted to make $50, so I didn't want to work Saturdays.
Yep.
Right. I mean, that was the baby step. Then I was like, what if I could get 10,000 in my account? Which is the next baby step was I got the student loan. But then after getting up, growing it to 100,000, I'm like, how do I get 1 million?
Right.
Right. And there was even a baby step in between there. I actually started the business because I was like, how do I raise more money to put in the stock market? But when I first started the business, one of my goals was because I made 100,000 at my job at Comcast. I was like, if I can just get 100 people to pay me $100, that would be 10,000 a month, and I would replace my Comcast salary. Because I didn't want to just go full time investing again. Because I remember doing that twice and losing everything, and I didn't have anything to fall back on. So I wanted
Mm-hmm.
something else that also offset if I had a bad year. But my point is those baby stuff. I never said I was like I'm gonna build $1 million business. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
actually, if I could just get a little bit more money to invest, I'll be great. Then I was like, if I can get a little bit more and quit my job, that'd be great.
Right.
Then it started like, okay, what if I get a whole lot more? So it's so much power in those baby steps,
Yep.
and
It's so
just getting
true.
started.
Just getting started. And I think the mentality behind, and that's a lot of what we talk about on the show, the mentality behind why people don't get started and why people get stuck, with their finances. Because if you hadn't ever been aware of money and just thought that like you just repeated the pattern of, I gonna have kids and they're not gonna have beds until they get to be teenagers and they're gonna grow up with, bars on the windows, like then you wouldn't be where you are. So, um, to be able to accept that like there's more out there and more in life, like takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, and like since this is called like hard money talks or hard money conversations, like the hardest money conversation people will have to have is inside their
Mm,
brain and
yep.
inside their heart. That's the hardest conversation you got to have because logically, and I'm glad I'm such a logical person, but logically, if you break it down, you're like, okay, that's a human being. I'm a human being. That's number one. We both breathe air and blood. Like, so now it's like they just know something I don't know. So if I can learn what they know, I could have what they have or get a similar result. I like to say similar result because
Mm-hmm.
you never know if you invested during the pandemic and everything shot up, like unless there's another pandemic, you might not get the exact result, but you're going to get your version of a result if you get that knowledge and information. And so when you start to look at it like that and say, like, they're not special, they just know something I don't know. And then I think the other hard conversation people have to have with themselves is like, are they deserving of it?
Mm-hmm.
Because some people are like, I don't deserve it. I'm stupid. And just the self talk, the stuff that you say to yourself. But if you say, like, I don't deserve it and I'm stupid, it's like, well, first of all, define stupid. It goes back to knowledge. They just know something you don't know. So then if you read that book or took that course, then you'd be not stupid. So then
Right.
just take the course.
Yep.
Right. So, like, we just have to really break this stuff down. Like, what does stupid mean? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it just means lack of knowledge, lack of information. Okay. Well, now you know what you don't know. Go learn what you don't know.
Right.
It's not that hard, but it's if we can break through those mental hurdles, we can start taking those steps forward and starting to get some version of our result. And I like to always say some version of result, because you will never get the same result I got. You won't get the same result. I'm a black male. I will not get the same result you get as a white female talking about money and finances. You will attract a different crowd, but we will both have our version of success. Yeah. And that's what people, if they can get over those hard conversations on the inside, that they deserve it, that they can learn something. And I think the third thing that most people don't give enough credence to is time. Some people be like, it's gonna take me a year to learn that. And they think that's too long. And it's like, well, how long is a lifetime of being broke compared to a year of learning something?
That's so true. And, you were talking about earlier about, studying stocks on a Friday night. And like, I only have my kids every other week. And how many times my friends have texted me like, hey, you want to go out? And I'm like, nope. And I sent him a screenshot of your face, because I'm like watching a video and I'm literally like sitting on my couch watching, Power Trades University, and I'm studying my stock market stuff, and I'm having the time of my life, because that's just where I'm at in my life. I'd rather do that. Because how much time do you spend watching Netflix, scrolling through your phone, on Facebook, like hours a day, but yet you tell me you don't have time to learn something new. We all have the same hours.
Once you get it, and once you get the information and get it down, in about 3 months, you will be able to just go back out on the Friday. It's not forever. Like just pay your dues for a couple months or whatever.
It's freaking cold here in New York, and I don't want to go outside. So I'm just going to.
Same here.
I'm just going to watch your videos all holiday season, or until it gets warm out again, and then I'll go back outside on my boat too, because I have a boat as well. So.
Right. But when you go back out, your money will be working for you, and that small time you paid, you'll start to see the gap between you and your friend. And I mean financially, not that you guys will grow apart, but I remember when I was going through the ranks, I was like, me and my friends are like this. Like they work a job, I work a job, we're kind of the same. And I was like, I got my degree and got a better job. It's like I started investing. I started a company. And it's like, if this was time, it's like as time goes on, the financial and lifestyle gap just widened so much for those little small baby steps that we took that seemingly was like, oh, he not coming out this Saturday, but that was a Saturday that the gap opened. Like, oh, he not coming out again. He's studying that stock stuff. That was another Saturday that the gap opened, right? Yep. And it just got wider and wider. And now I'm free in the middle of the week. Like, let's go take the boat out. Everybody like, well, let me see if I can get some time off.
You're like, what now?
Yeah. I'm like, what's up? Y'all still doing that as of a time off? No, I'm joking. I mean, I'm not, but I am.
No, I get it. There's so many times where I'm like, does anybody want to hang out? It's a Wednesday afternoon and everybody's working, I get it. Right. So, well, as we wrap up, I appreciate, this has been a great hour, just catching up on a friend level too. But as we wrap up, I want you to let everybody know how they can find you and get involved in your community too.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm sure the links will be in the description. So if you're listening to Laura's podcast, if you're on Lauren's website, just go to the description, click the link. If you're driving or something and just want something easy to remember, I'm Jason Brown. You can find me at Brown Report on Instagram or thebrownreport.com on the internet. But if you can't remember that, just go to the links in the description on Lauren's podcast or her website.
Thank you. Yeah, no. And then your community, Power Trades University, that's the name of your course and all of that, right?
Absolutely. If they go to thebrownreport.com, all the YouTube, social media, how to get access to the course, if they want to check that out, all of that, they can find at thebrownreport.com.
Yeah.
And then, I know I want to talk to you about, some other things. So that's why I'm telling them, go through the links in your profile.
Yeah. No, I think it's awesome. Thank you so much for spending the hour with us and having these hard money talks and being so open and honest, with your struggles. I think it's really going to help a lot of people.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for having me on. Yep. You're a beautiful person. And I'm so glad I got a chance to meet you at FinCon and that I can call you a friend.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Woo! Woo, okay. That was a great episode. Jason, thank you so much for being on the show. And I hope that you all enjoyed this episode of the Hard Money Talk Show. I loved everything that he said, especially at the end of the show when he talked about the hardest money conversation that you're ever going to have is with yourself. And I think that that is so powerful because it's so true that throughout our life, we pick up all of this baggage when it comes to money and we carry it around and we wonder why we aren't successful. And if we can lay that baggage down and have these hard money conversations with ourselves, then maybe we can break down some of those barriers to financial success. So thank you again, Jason, for being on the show. If you want to check out any of the links of anything that we talked about, the books, Jason, his courses, please go to the show notes, laurengrootman.com/podcast. And you can find this episode. And I'm so thankful that you took the time to join me on another episode today. And I will see you back next week. Bye.